fashion, allowing for trends that walk down the runway one day that are then turned over so quickly that garment factories easily produce it at an eighth of the cost. So this trickle-down effect that happens also affects the designer who has just been hacked of his designs or her designs. It monopolizes the industry, it exhibits shoddy workmanship, and unethical working conditions, to name just a few of the related issues that happen with fast fashion. So I have a question. How many of you here have limited funds for clothing and look for the best price deals? Raise your hand. Okay, because I know I do too. So after this event, I hope that you will walk away with the understanding of ways to maintain your beautiful clothing expression, as well as knowing how to shop savvier and more ethically. So thank you all for coming. My name is Kathleen Grievers, and I am part of the RISD Apparel faculty and represent a committee of people who all volunteer their time and efforts to organize our first Fashion Revolution. So what is Fashion Revolution? Fashion Revolution Week brings together people from all over the world to show the power of fashion to change the story for people who make these clothings. So this is a map of locations that are hosting Fashion Revolution events this week. It is an international, global awareness of what fast fashion can do in our industry. So we are honored to host this international call for change, and I want to thank you to our facilities building. This is Joe hanging up signs. We're very honored to have all the efforts of this community. The trigger for all these events was the deadly collapse of Rana Plaza in Dhaka, Bangladesh on April 24, 2013, leaving in its wake a death toll of 1,135 people. Most of the deceased were garment factory workers who were buried when two illegally constructed floors using substandard materials and hundreds of building code violations came crashing down on them. Almost half as many people died in Rana Plaza as those in the World Trade Center in New York in 2001. To put this in perspective, the footprint of Rana Plaza is no larger than a basketball court, while the two Twin Towers covered 16 acres. We are here tonight to share, give awareness, and insight, open up more understanding about changes that need to happen. They need to happen. Most importantly, to save lives and to nurture our earth. So, if you've seen in and around Brown and RISD campuses, the possibility for having all of this type of promotion is made by people who are driven by a legacy, a promise, and a need to bring more awareness about the global effect from buying into fast fashion. Bringing awareness to #WhoMadeMyClothes was a community effort. Faculty, staff, students, administration came together yesterday to show support of our first Fashion Revolution by wearing repurposed business shirts inside out with labels and logos showing. Paparazzi on the scene was our very own fashion photographer, Matt Francis. One person who also gave so much time, effort, passion, and vision to make this entire event possible is my friend, co-worker, and RISD Apparel alumni, Suzanne Mancini. Suzanne, thank you for your drive and compassion and your dedication to RISD's first Fashion Revolution. Thank you. I would also like to take a moment to thank Dean Abanala, Elizabeth Herman, Elliot Bassett Kane, and Eileen Froughton. And also a huge thank to the supporting committees and departments who volunteered their time. Our Division of Architecture and Design, RISD Global Initiative Student Group, RISD Research, Fashion at Brown, RISDapparel.com, Matt Francis Photography, and Umbrella Imprints, who generously printed our shirts. Thank you also to RISD's President's Office, RISD Continuing Education, and closest to my heart, the entire RISD Apparel Department. Thank you to past and present department heads of the Apparel Department in helping to ever evolve the commitment to the ethical, traditional, and fantastical design approach to making clothing. So what can you do? This is what we're asking you after you run through tonight's events, and I'll go through the schedule a little bit more in detail. But the idea is to really just take a selfie with yourself and your label showing and hashtag who made my clothes. Be curious about where your clothes are made from. Tonight we'll be giving homage to our state of Rhode Island, which was once a hub of the garment manufacturing. We'll meet a member of the Fashion Revolution Committee whose family's legacy led his commitment to spending much time and energy towards helping create this event. We've received the honor and approval from producer-director Meghana Gupta to screen her 14-minute film, Unravel. Following the screening of Unravel, will be a presentation from former head of the RISD Apparel Department, longtime faculty and RISD alumni Meg DeCubellis, who will share firsthand her experience of being in the presence of the people who have to cope with our garment pollution. With much anticipation, I'm proud to also present senior apparel student Chris Mena's degree collection. Chris's process of making this collection can be defined as what happens when positive consumption collides with creativity. This will be a preview of Chris's collection and a teaser for what's to be shown on Saturday, May 7th for the RISD Apparel Senior Runway Show. Tonight's final highlight will be the screening of the film The True Cost, produced by Michael Ross, and director Andrew Morgan. So, RISD's fashion events also continue on Sunday at Brown University at 12 p.m. There is a clothing swish, and if you wish to repurpose some of your clothing, you can go to Brown Casper Multipurpose Room. You'll receive a ticket for every piece of clothing that you put in, and then from 1 to 2 o'clock, there'll be a fashion walk on the Brown Main Green area. Then from 2 to 4, back at the Casper Multipurpose Room, where the clothing swish will take place. So you take your ticket, you go in, and you choose a new piece for your wardrobe. So with that said, I want to go into just a little idea about the pride and history of having a Fashion Revolution event at a location that was the beginning of the textile and garment manufacturing here in the United States. The first textile mill in the country was founded in 1790 in Pawtucket by Samuel Slater. So looking around now, you would barely know that the impact that fashion industry had in the little towns known as Pawtucket and Fall River. So one person who can attest to this legacy is Dean Abanilla, technology specialist in RISD's Continuing Education Department. Dean is also one of the Fashion Revolution Committee leaders who helped organize the presence of RISD Fashion Revolution on social media. He orchestrated the media looping on monitors all over campus to show The True Cost and Unravel. I welcome Dean Abanilla to share his story of his inspiration and to be a part of this, of being a part of this fashion revolution. Thank you, everyone.
That's fine. Did you have the slide of the? Yeah, that's fine. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So, working in IT, I've always been really bothered by the amount of waste that I see, and especially how that it's sort of accelerated in the last 20 years, really. I came from a very frugal household, and on top of that, I had grandparents that lived through the Depression, so we didn't even use paper towels in our household. It was an Italian family, so we had this, we called this, your dish rag, we called it a moppine, and you'd clean with a moppine, and you'd clean that up, and you keep laundering that stuff. And so when I heard about this event, I was really excited to see that the apparel department was interested in this sort of stuff, so I went to a screening last fall. And during the screening, there was a scene in one of the films that really struck me. There was this green water pouring into a pond. And I was reminded of the stories of my grandfather, who worked in the textile industry here in Providence. He worked in the Atlantic Mills and in the Woonsock Mills. And he told me, Dindi, it was like working in hell. He used to call me Dindi. It was like working in hell. He said, I used to have to wear blocks on my feet to walk across the floor because the chemicals would, burn your shoes and destroy your shoes, and my hands would be dyed black, and I couldn't wash the black off my hands. And I would be breathing in formaldehyde and the fumes of hydrochloric acid all day. And I saw this film, and I'm like, we went through that here in the United States. We saw this, in Manhattan in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, when these Italian immigrant women fell to their deaths trying to escape a fire there. And instead of, fixing this, we've just moved it overseas, and globalization has, accelerated that. So this was really important to me, and when Kathleen reached out to me, I was really happy to get involved in it, because basically what's happened here in the United States is what we have now in this film you're going to see in Unravel and in True Cost. So with that, I'll leave it to Andy to cue it up, and there we go. Thank you.
ये भी तो अंग्रेजी डालते देखो अंग्रेज अच्छे लगते जो अंग्रेज नहीं है ना अच्छी लगती है देखने में फिर वहां से समुद्र पार करके मतलब गड्ढे बनी होती है बड़ी बड़ी समुद्र में बिल्कुल घर जैसा होता है जहाज बार्डर पे कट लग गया काटेगा भी तभी कोई ले जाए अब कोई मालिक सामान खरीदेगा माल बढ़े इस पर पानी जितने में ये लोग पानी खरीदते हैं ना उतने वो लोग कपड़े खरीद सकते हैं इसलिए 2-4 बार ये कपड़े यूज करके फिर वो फेंक देते हैं ऐसे तो बोल रहे हैं वही हम सुन रहे हैं मुझे नहीं बताया
पता नहीं उसको कपड़े धोने अच्छे लगते हैं या नहीं क्या बातें हो तो पता नहीं
लोग बोलते हैं ये कट जाता है ये कट के हरियाणा पार कर जाता है हर डिजाइन के कपड़े आते हैं और जो हमने कपड़ा नहीं देख रखा वो भी आते ऐसे सोच करते भी ऐसे होते कैसे डालती है ये कपड़ा जैसा इसको देखो पूरा सेट बना हुआ अंग्रेजी नहीं लगती ज्यादा अंग्रेज डिस्कवरी में किसी दिन चैनल देखना आप ये आगे तो चैनल बटन में जो आते हैं अजीब चीज तो ये है जो ये है कच्ची मोती भी लग रहे और ये नग भी स्टोनियो वो भी लग रहे
बाहर देश में कोई करता होगा कोई जाता होगा कोई
बहुत अजीब अजीब कपड़े आते हैं देख के भी हंसी आ जाती है ये कैसे डालते हैं
वो अजीब ही लगता है, कोई कोई पैंट तो ऐसी आ जाती है जैसे 4 बंदों की एक ही पैंट है, वो अजीब हो जाता है, देख के भी हंसी आती है। नहीं उस देश के इतने बंदे खाते हैं इतने मोटे मोटे हो रहे हैं। कभी कभी अच्छा कपड़ा निकल आता है, जैसा ये फिरोक है, मेरे को फिरोक आता है, शर्म आती है मतलब ऐसा कपड़े भी ला।
अरे ये मैं भी हाँ दिलकाई इस दिन स्टार्ट ऐसे भी हुआ सोनिया पे क्या गई जल्दी इसकी लगाए
पढ़े लिखे तो आपको पता है डालते ही हैं। हमें तो अच्छा लगता है, भी अच्छी इज्जत है, जिंदगी तो भगवान ने इनको दे रखी है और तब इतना ऐश आराम से रह रही है। हम भी मन में ये सोचते हैं कि काश हमारी भी ऐसे जिंदगी होती। फिर सारा दिन कपड़े फाड़ने पड़ते हैं, ऐसे देखने पड़ते हैं। ये अलग अलग जब आ गया फिर मतलब धागा बढ़ता है अलग साइड में। कपड़े तो बहुत खरीदते रहते हैं, जैसे इंग्लैंड, अमेरिका, जापान, अपने मन से जीती हैं, अपने मन से रहती हैं, खाना पहनना उनका अपने मन का, मतलब अपनी जिंदगी अपने साथ रह गया, कोई रोक टोक नहीं। हमारे तो ये सोचे भी बहुत महंगे कपड़े हो, तो वहाँ पे भी अमीर लोग हैं, उनको पैसे की कमी रहती नहीं, तो इसी वजह से वो कपड़े बेच देते हैं। वो अपने मतलब पहनने के लिए तो बहुत महंगे पहनते होंगे, जब बेचते पैसे ही दे देते होंगे क्या पता। रेट पे तो आधा पीस लिया फिर टीचर पे मार जाता है।
दूसरों के लिए स्वीकार करो, लेकिन फिर भी खूबसूरती तो उतनी ही रहेगी जो परमात्मा ने दे दी है ना, चीज तो वही रहेगी, नेचुरल चीज तो वही होती है आदमी की। हाँ
कार्ड पे जाके फिर ट्रेन पे आता है, फिर वो गोले बनते हैं आगे। कम्बल बनते हैं, कपड़े बनते हैं, धागे भी बनते हैं। बाहर देश में जाते हैं। ऐसा जी करता है कि हम भी बाहर देश में जाएं, जैसे दूसरों की तरह हम भी कपड़े डाल लें।
ये सब नसीबों के खेल हैं। शायद परमात्मा ने हमारे लिए इतना ही लिखा था कि दाल रोटी खाओ और प्रभु के गुण गाओ, बस अपने लेते रहो, एक दिन चिता में सो जाओ।
देखो किस में जाएंगे, मन तो करता है एरोप्लेन में जाएंगे। और इनका देश देखेंगे कैसा देश है, कैसे कपड़े डालते हैं, कैसा खाना पीना इनका। ज्यादा तो अमेरिका में जाने की इच्छा है। कभी किस्मत में हमारे बेटे का घुमाएंगे तो जरूर घूमें।
gave us plenty to think about and to kick off our evening. And now Meg DeCubellis will be speaking about her travels to India in January of this year with some folks from URI and students, and I'll leave it to Meg.
Let me just get myself all in here. Am I actually on there? Okay, so as Suzanne mentioned, my name is Meg DeCubellis. I know a lot of you. Some of you are having class. It's really exciting to have you here. Thank you so much. I've actually taught in the apparel design department at RISD for the past 15 years, and my career in fashion design has taken me all over the world. Before I taught, I designed and traveled, did a lot of travel to the Far East. And when the opportunity arose this past January to go to India and to visit factories, I was really excited about that. And so I grabbed that opportunity. And I was also asked to do a workshop while I was there for the women in India who actually teach girls who live in the dump in Delhi. So the workshop was very open-ended. It could be whatever I really wanted it to be. So I started to brainstorm on what to do with Suzanne Mancini, and we're trying to think of something that would be interesting for both the women that were there, not needing too much equipment, so it's sort of this back and forth kind of thing. And one of the things Suzanne suggested was arm knitting, so I sort of went off to India thinking that I was going to do similar to what the women in the video had, where there were going to be a lot of rag pickers, and I would be shredding fabric, and we would be working with that. And then when I got there, things changed a little bit. But currently, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I am not only faculty here, I am also the design director at Illuminite, which is a reflective running and cycling clothing company. And for the past 5 years, we have manufactured probably about 80% of our products here locally in Fall River, Massachusetts. When I took over the company with my partners, probably close to 7 years ago, 95% of the product was made overseas, and we've taken it back here. And since I have always had access to factories in my life, I decided to bring that into the classroom at RISD. So about 10 years ago, probably, I started taking students to factories that I had relationships with in Fall River. So this is my class from last year, and we were at the factory Accurate Services. This is a couple of years ago, and we were at both Accurate Services as well as Corber Hats, which manufactures hats in Fall River as well. Because one of my personal interests here at RISD is actually working with factory cast-offs and waste and end products and turning that into something. And so in the fall of the sophomore year, many students do the Re-Innovative project. They all do it so far in apparel. And this is a student's work from the remains of hats at Corber Hats in Fall River. And this was Jackie Sisson's work and a photo shoot that I had done with her there. So when I went to India, my thought was, okay, this is what I've done here. Let me see what's going on over there. We were going to be visiting different factories. Let me see what they have. Maybe there's something. But my perception of India was much like a lot of these photographs. It's a sensory explosion when you get there, and we were there for 2 weeks, which someone just said to me, it's not long enough, because the 2 weeks is really so impactful that you really need to be there a little bit longer. We visited amazing places in India. We visited some of the countrysides. We visited traditional, tourist sites such as the Taj Mahal, which actually looked like a backdrop to me because the pollution is so bad that there's no depth of field. So when you take a photograph, it's literally like it came down on this screen is what it looked like until you're probably about 20 feet ahead of it. We also visited beautiful, shrines and temples. This is the temple to Ganesh. We climbed up there. The Monkey Temple, which was amazing, and the Golden Temple, which is for the Sikh religion, is one of their shrines. What I found in India that I thought was amazing was the colors. The colors were just so fascinating, and the women were by far the brightest, most colorful thing in the whole country. And amidst a lot of dust and dirt and grime, the women were like jewels. It was amazing, no matter where you went. And the other side of India that was extremely prevalent was the poverty. The dump cities around New Delhi were amazing and huge and their own little worlds. It's funny, watching that other video, the people in India were so amazing and so wonderful, and they loved being photographed with all of us. They loved the Americans. They would flock to you when you whipped out a camera. It was just crazy. So as we went around the city, we started some of our factory tours at a small pottery sort of part of Delhi. It's almost like a little inner city within the city. And these children would just run out of the sides of their buildings and the houses so they could take pictures of us. And one of the things I found in India most fascinating was the amount of handicraft that goes on. How much handicraft is embedded in the culture of India. This is actually a factory that has a lot of automated machinery, but it also has hand crafting going on at the same time. So down the hall is automated machinery, and there's whole workrooms where women are hand beating scarves because they need that part of the embellishment to be hand done. Because India has such a history of handicraft and making, there's museums, there's live museums where they're showing the culture of making, and what's amazing is it's still very present. So they're showing, the culture of making these beds, and you drive down the street and these beds are being used currently in the shop owner's shop along the side of the road with their children lying there while they're sewing, whatever they're sewing, which is their job. And Christine was with me on my trip and took this picture of me doing the little weaving myself. But what I found was that so much of the handicraft is carried down through the generations, and it has a lot to do with the caste system, where if you were in that caste system as a maker, you were a entrepreneur, that is something that you're born into and that you will carry on through your families. So at this home pottery workshop we visited, it was fascinating to see how they've streamlined the business within their homes. So everything is done right there. And at the end of my PowerPoint, I have a young filmmaker with me from the University of Rhode Island who is on my trip, who has a short little film, and he talks a little bit about the pottery too. What was fascinating too was that things are changing with women in India, which is really amazing to see. These women here are daughters of the shop owner at one of these home pottery facilities, and they created their own little business selling clay jewelry. And so they had all of these beautiful little jewels, they had little tiny pots, amidst all the other things that their dad was selling. And I found it to be fascinating because it was their own business, and their dad actually was letting them deal with us as customers as well. And they were so excited because we were buying a bunch of stuff because we knew we were buying it right directly from these women, and it was fascinating. And like weaving, the block printing is really embedded in the culture. We were fortunate to go to a facility where they showed us how the block printing was actually done right there. What I think maybe as a maker I found most fascinating in India was that everyone makes something. It's so entrepreneurial. So as you drove down the street, there were 10-foot shop front, storefronts, And one would look like this. It would have a sewing machine, and you knew that they sewed things. The next one would be a welder, and he had a big engine out there, and he was welding on the sidewalk. And this was going on, and it was just fascinating to see how business was done. This is, they're 24/7. This is their business. So these guys had sewing machines all out on the sidewalk, and it was pretty cool for me as a maker. And I loved the way everything was used. So every product was beautifully made, but what I found was it was used well. So they were natural materials that they were being put to good use. In the factory setting, we saw everything from the home making to factories that were becoming automated but still weren't really there yet. So there were some real toxic fumes that were being released, to then factories that were extremely automated and immaculate, with such an amazing backstory. This factory here was actually is a man and his son, and I have another slide with them, but he actually did his graduate work in the UK at King's College, and his whole idea was that there will be no excess material on the floor. So everything that you need for that particular batch, you will get right there. It's in this square on the floor. You get that. Once that's done, you're moving on to the next machine. So there's not a lot of clutter. And I found it fascinating because it was so amazingly immaculate when we walked around. This slide here is actually at Hero Cycle, and what I found there was that because there are not a lot of rules and regulations as far as toxic waste and whatnot, only when something is really threatened, such as a national treasure like the Taj Mahal, there's not really a worry about it. So the Taj Mahal is being threatened because there were so many huge factories in Agra that were working with heavy metals, that the heavy metal factories were banned within the city limits of Agra. But basically all that meant was that they moved them outside the city to the country. So there were no other stipulations being put on it. So until they get to the point, I think, where they're able to stop that, it's going to go on because there's enough space to move people out there. This is Hero Cycles here. They produce 50,000 bikes a year, the largest bike manufacturer in the country, and everyone in India rides a bike. It's amazing. Some of the workers there actually are faster at doing their hand painting technique than the machinery that they bought to do it, so they still do some of it by hand because they have less mistakes and less waste working by hand as opposed to the machinery. So this is Centex, and this is the highly automated facility. And what I found really fascinating about this facility was there was probably about 25% of the workers there were women. And that was very different compared to some of the other factories we've been at, and it was great. And here's another facility where they work with a lot of the local artwork. So they actually are working, the other women that were sitting on the floor were right near these people, but they're doing, a lot of this is all still hand embroidered because they're so good at it. And this is block printing. So this is another form of screen printing, but using the techniques from block printing that they had established as a real hand method. So here's the owner's son of Centex, and they're very interested in good relationships with the U.S. because they manufacture scarves, and they work with basically the designers from a lot of companies, and so they travel to India, and they're very aware that the designers that come there want a nice facility. They want to know how things are made. They want to walk the floor. So it's amazing how just the fact that they work with people from outside of India, it changes their whole perspective. So here they are on the floor, and they have highly automated looms. But the problem with this is the waste that is generated from this manufacturing process. So you can see that the selvage edge on the far edge here is, it gets cut off and it's all raveled, and it ends up in those these big bins that are on the sides of the machine. So as I was walking around, I was wondering what they do with that waste, because that's sort of my go-to. And also a lot of these threads, because a lot of the machines are jacquard, and a lot of them have, floats in the back, and so they have to cut that stuff off. So you see here that they're cutting off the selvage edge, and while I was there, I said, what do you do with that? And they said, well, we generally just throw that away. And I was like, well, can I take some? So they gave me like this little size baggie, and I'm like, no, I actually want a lot. So they gave me like this huge bags, like big, like garbage bag size, and then we set back off to Delhi, and I was thinking about my project. And in manufacturing, there's waste. I mean, depending on what you're making and what type of waste you end up with, there's a lot of waste. But in India, there's waste from all the factories, but there's also waste that's imported, like you saw in the video, that they're buying, and it's not always usable waste either. Sometimes like that waste is being put to use because it was fabric, and the rag pickers are going through and they're sorting and whatnot. But a lot of waste just ends up going to the dump. And the amount of waste that's there is just amazing. We definitely saw more trucks, trash trucks, than any other vehicle on the road. And they were beautiful, which is just so amazing. And you notice here, they were totally embellished. They were colors, they were every inch of them, and we were fascinated, Christine and I, as we were watching them, being a graphic designer, she's like, gosh, look at the font, this is amazing. And we were looking and noticing how there were, traditional Indian, motifs, and then there were just like, all kinds of fascinating things on the side. But in one day, we probably would see 50 trash trucks, and that is not even an exaggeration. But the dumps are all over, and they're interspersed all through the cities, and there's a lot of people and children that are living there. And so generally what happens is the dump gets their new waste delivered in the morning, and a lot of the children don't go to school because the parents know that the best time to get good stuff at the dump is as soon as the dump trucks come. So the parents and the children, mostly the women and the children, will go to the dumps first thing to get the best pick of whatever's there. And these are some homes that are makeshift homes, right along, these are along the road, but they go for miles because they're deep, and there's its entire community there. They become, actually, a lot of the people that go to the dump become highly specialized. So some will pick mostly textiles, some will pick tinfoil, some will pick just plastics, and they will actually sell them back. It's a business. They'll sell them back, and they will be able to make money. I remember when we were there, Mambir, who is our engineering professor at URI, who took us on this trip, said that he knows someone there that only picks the caps of plastic, the plastic caps of toothpaste, just the caps, because the caps are made of some sort of plastic, which is more valuable, and he can get more money. So he literally just picks caps. And the trash is organized, and often you'll see scales out there for weighing when people will come. And so I got back in my head about my scrap, and got back on the train in Delhi, to Delhi from where we were at the Centex mill. And this is Virginia. She was with us on the trip too. And we rolled our scrap into balls. So they looked a lot like yarn, because I thought, okay, well, here's something that already looks a bit like a fiber, like a textile. So we filled about 3 big bags of this scrappy yarn-ish stuff, and then we headed off to meet with the women who actually teach young girls whose families live in the dump. Because one of the problems is, if there's a way to make money outside of the dump, then maybe they won't stay there. But as of right now, if there's a way to make money and it's picking things in the dump and selling them, then school is really not really an option. So here's the workshop that I put together with the teachers, and most of the women that were there ranged from ages 20 to 60, and they have varying degrees of handicraft ability themselves. The younger women, many of them are actually in school part-time, and then they teach part-time at the school with the younger children. This young woman here actually grew up in the dump herself in Delhi until her mom secured a job as a cleaning lady, and they were able to move out. I spoke with her recently, and she said she has since left teaching to go to school full-time, which made me feel really good, and she would have come home with us that day. She was just all about it. She said, I want to befriend all of you. I want you to be friends on Facebook. So she's pretty amazing. But many of these young girls are helped with government programs, obviously, to go to college, and they love the idea of working with the factory scrap. And it was really funny because most of the young girls were on one side of the room, and most of the older women were on the other side of the room. The younger girls had better English skills, so they were talking with us a little bit more. The older women weren't as comfortable in the language, but they were extremely gifted when it came to making. So I passed out the little balls, and we started doing little arm knitting, and this woman here in the red, and the woman, you can't see her to the left, like had an entire outfit done by the time I turned around from talking to the younger girls. It was just fascinating. It was just part of the way they were brought up. They probably have been making and creating things from the time they were children. So here's some of the finished products that they made, and this is just part of hers, because she had a whole ensemble. It was amazing. She was something. And here's more girls, and then this is the group. So there's Mambir in the back with me, and all the girls and the women, all the teachers at the school, and we did this at a little government center, and it was amazing, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity to do it, because it was really amazing to not only, work with these women from the dump, but see the culture of India itself and how much potential there is there for making. It just, from the world we come from of making, we buy fabrics, our students buy fabrics and yardage, and they make something up, and these people are literally making something out of nothing. This is pretty fascinating. What I have too is a little video. Now I gotta make sure I can get to it, Sean. And I might need, let's see. I saved it here, and then I'm supposed to open it in a new tab. Cool. Okay.
The village we went to had artisans, all through the town that were making, bowls and plates and things that they used on a daily basis. Some of them, I think, were exported and probably sold back to tourists. And we were able to see the pottery being made in a small home, so you could actually understand the entire process.
India is dirty, and people have learned to live to accept the level of hygiene that has not been acceptable to the West for many, many years. From a health perspective, the conditions are quite bad. This is a mixture of the poverty, mixture of what resources are available. There are still families in India and rural India that don't have access to running water. India is not where Western societies are with respect to factory efficiencies, factory safety, or even the technology deployed. Very often factories in India buy used tools from the West, use machines from the West, and then they make them run for another X years.
Visits to the factories, starting with, a very, like small home factory, basically, of pottery, all the way up through a bike factory and a scarf factory, was fascinating for me because it really showed me how manufacturing works in India on very many different levels. Some being very, rudimentary, and others being extremely technical.
Sean, do you want to stand up? Okay, so this is Sean Antoine right here. He's a great young filmmaker, and that's just an excerpt of the larger film. And when is that? You're previewing that?
It's going to be coming out Monday at 8 o'clock on my YouTube page. You guys can add me on social media. My name is Sean Antoine II. So you just go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on all social medias. So I'll be posting a link on Monday at 8 o'clock.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So now we have something really exciting, and this is a senior collection that Kathleen mentioned from apparel student Chris Mena. And Chris has been my student a couple of times, so it's really exciting to see his work. And basically, this year, for his senior collection, Chris said that he wanted to take everything in his closet that was his own clothing and use it to create his senior collection. So he took it and he took it apart and he remade things, and all of his looks are coming from things that he had in his own closet. So his goal was not to buy anything to put into the collection and really just use what he had. So without further ado, Chris Mena.
people. And there was one of the buildings that I was hustling for. They closed the police over and I was trying to make some money for my daughter. All my people to the store, you know what I'm saying? So it's good. That's all the truth. I used to read more of that magazine. I was like, everything up in the limousine. And the pictures on the wall. Every Saturday, rap attack, Mr. Magic Morning Mall. I let my tape drop to my tape pop. Smoking weed, bamboo, sipping on rock, stop way back. When I had the red and black lumberjack, with the hat to match. Remember rapping Duke, the hard, you never thought that hip hop would take it this far. Now I'm in the limelight cause I rock tight. Time to get paid, blow up like the World Trade. Born sinner, the opposite of a winner. Remember when I used to eat sardines for dinner? Used to raw G, Brucey B, chicken free. Don't master flex, my blood start ski. I blow up like you thought I would. Call the trick, same number, same word, it's all good. And niggas don't know what's magic for. I'm a song.
Thank you, Chris. So the final piece of our event tonight is to show the screening of The True Cost. So thank you everyone for coming and please enjoy the movie The True Cost. Thank you.